Hello, how's it going? Today I wanted to talk a little bit about the pandemic. Not the pandemic itself, but the use of time in the pandemic. So I'm not exactly sure how it happened here in the United States. Obviously, every state did things differently. I think everything really started to shut down in the UK around. This was in 2020, around mid March. And it really didn't, you know, you really couldn't do anything other than go to the supermarket, which is where I worked. So it was an interesting experiment, if you will. I mean, experiment kind of implies that you want to take part in it, or uh, this idea that it's all been planned out and it's very sort of according to a certain, experimental design. But obviously, this gives you a window into certain aspects of society that you couldn't have otherwise known. One of the things I've noticed is there were two types of people during the pandemic. Now, you never really know who's going to be who. But there were two types of people during the pandemic. There were those who kind of just sat around waiting for the pandemic to end. Some are still sitting around waiting for the pandemic to end. As far as I'm concerned, it's pretty much over. Anybody who wants a vaccine can get it. So those who don't have it don't want it. And I'm not really going to get into the whole science of it and the mentality behind getting a vaccine or not getting a vaccine, masking or not masking, loving to mask or loving not to mask, hating the mask. That's another mentality that I think probably bears some exploration, but it's not really the subject of what I wanted to talk about today. But those who sat around and did nothing, it was just kind of like, well, what were you? Why? Why did you do nothing? I think perhaps people often talk about responses under stress, particularly in biologists. They'll talk about flight, fight response, but often what you see, and this is true in people as well as in animals, that there's a third way, and that's basically just freezing, paralysis, if you will. And it seems like there were quite a few people who just kind of buried their heads under the sand and said, "This is not happening. I'm not here. This is not going on." La, la, we're all basically lying to themselves. And you know, the truth of the matter is that you couldn't go to work. You couldn't unless you worked at some, uh, if you were a key worker. But you were at home. What did you do? I mean, there were only certain things that you could do. But as far as I was concerned, I did not appreciate. I'm the kind of guy, like I've said before, I'm the kind of guy I need to get out of the house. This is very important to me. Not because I love the sunshine and not because I love nature. It's because I need to get out of the house. It is very bad for me to be locked up in the house. And so um, I had to get out whenever I could. And in the meantime, I needed my mind to be busy because this is really bad for me. And it kind of showed you where government's priorities were. It was not me. I am not a priority. I've never been a priority for any government. I'm never going to be a priority. Even when I'm 90 years old, they're still going to find a way to keep, put me on the sideline, so to speak. So, I mean, I, that's what it is. And, I can choose to cry about it, but it's not going to do me any good. Um, so I decided I was going to do something, anything, just something while I was locked indoors. And so one of the things that I'd been doing up to this point is I'd been doing judo. Well, that was one of the first things to shut down. Obviously, it's a contact sport. You're up in each other's faces, sometimes like this, face to face. You're sweating all over each other. You are going to get, if you're going to get coronavirus anywhere, you're going to get it there. So obviously, that was one of the first things to be shut down, and one of the last things to be opened back up. That was my exercise, my sporty activity, and that was gone. So I'd never considered myself a runner, so I started running. It was very painful, and I lived in the south of England, which is really just rolly hills. And oh my God, why didn't I live in start this when I was in New Jersey, or why didn't we move to the Netherlands so I could start running where it's just flat as a pancake? But, it was rough. There was this one hill that it was easy to go down, but it was really, really steep coming up. And it took me about a good 2 weeks to be able to run down that hill and up the hill without stopping. And that was only about a half a mile. It's a really taxing half mile, or at least the quarter mile going up the hill. And then I started just building on it. Okay, now I'll go to the end, one street down. I'll go all the way down to the zebra crossing, or I'll go all the way down to my work, the supermarket. Oh, and then when I'm there, I have to go all the way back. Well, then that's pretty much 2 or 3 miles. You start building on that, and certainly you're running like 6, 7, 8 miles. It really depends on I didn't like going on these country roads because people drive like morons out there. It's very dangerous out there. So I used to run in they had these little walking trails. I ran on them. And you could run through horse pastures. I tried to steer clear of the horses, obviously, because they spook easily. But, and then I started just walking places. I walked up to, the next town up, which was about 4 or 5 miles. So I would do 10 miles in a day. I didn't lose a ton of weight, mostly because my wife started cooking like a son of a bitch. Just everything. Everybody in Britain. You should have seen the flour stock in the supermarket. It was pitiful. She had to she had to order online like 10-kilo bags of flour. It was ridiculous. Those things are massive. And they're hard to get too. But that's the other thing. So basically, I started running because it was, I had to do something. I had to get my heart pumping. I had to get out. I had to do exercise. It's good for you. It's good for you mentally. It's good for you physically. And, I do have a little bit of depression. So I, get those endorphins and, you're thinking about the pain in your legs or in your abdomen. You're not really thinking about depressing thoughts. You're more just like, oh my God, that kind of thing. It's, as terrible as it is in the moment, you're like, oh, well, I killed a good hour or so. And then I decided I had to do more than that. So I ended up doing a EDIC class online. It was through a site called edX. And it was done through edX partnered with Harvard University to do like a data science program. And that took about 3 or 4 months. And it was good. It was a refresher on a lot of economics things. It was a refresher on a lot of statistical things. I learned a new computer language, a statistical language called R, which apparently is used. And I just felt like, oh yeah, I'm getting this. I'm getting back into this. It's really good. And I suddenly in the middle of this, I kind of thought, wait a minute, if I ever get up to a job interview in something in my field, I would say maybe it could be possible that somebody asks you, well, what did you do during the pandemic? I was like, well, I did X, I did Y, I did Z, and that kind of thing. And you think, oh, well, here's a guy who makes hay while the sun shines. And as things began to open up, we couldn't travel to France or to, Spain or Italy, but we could travel a lot around in Europe. And so we went all over, not all over Europe, but all over in England. And we traveled all over the place. I mean, The day that Stonehenge opened, there was no one there. It was amazing. It was incredible. Um, and we got English Heritage subscription or membership, which was like £100, £120 for the both of us, and we could go to any place in the English Heritage, and it was part of your membership that you can go there. And this is like Hadrian's Wall. This is a bunch of places all over the country, in Yorkshire and in the Midlands and the West, and we just went all over the place. We also had a subscription to uh, National Trust. That's like they sort of do the same thing. They're slightly different, but and we went all over the place. We saw, and I would tell people, and people said, you've seen more of my country than I have. I've seen. Stop that or rephrase that. People would say, you've seen more of my country than I have. That's weird. And I just said, look, this is why we're here. We're not here just for me to work in a supermarket. We're here to experience things, another way of life, see old stuff. We don't really have a ton of old stuff. Here in Philadelphia is like one of the few cities that we have anything that's older than like 200 years old. Um, just walking around today, it's interesting. You see, we actually do have a nice, well, parts of it are nice anyway. And the other thing that the pandemic forced me to do, and I don't know if it did it for you, was that it basically caused me to revisit my priorities. I'm not going to get political about this, but I think a lot of politicians are trying to urge people to rethink their political goals. That could be scary, because a lot of I don't like big change. Big change is really bad because somebody's. I don't think it's for the best. I think somebody's there to profit off of it. But anyway, um, for your own sake, you have to realize what you see numbers of people dying around you. You think, oh wow, better get my shit together. And so you kind of think, well, what's important to me? And I started thinking, well, it's my wife. We have pets. I had to check in on my parents occasionally just to make sure that they're not going nuts. And they're getting old, and obviously things are a little bit different now. My mom's been in the hospital for the last 2 or 3 months, uh, which has been pretty bad for my dad because he's getting old. He's 5 years older than my mom, and it's hard on him. It's hard on her, and I hope they survive this out. But um, I started focusing on, okay, my family, my wife, if we do have kids, then that kind of thing. This is really important to me, and also myself. I want to be a better person, and part of this, I think, was already in the process, but it's more about taking stock. And I started noticing, I was like, I don't really care about stuff. The only thing I spent money on, other than bills and stuff and food, uh, was on books, traveling, and drink. I have to. No, I'm not crazy, but you know, I think a lot of people started drinking a little bit too much during the pandemic. I've cut back significantly. I've already lost about 5 or 6 pounds since we've got back, which is nice. I can feel it. Pants are a little looser. Um, I'm not, I can cinch up the belt another little notch uh, later, which is, I don't know, that's a sign of progress. I guess you got to take your victories while you can. And so I just found myself not interested in stuff enough. Like, I just interested in more about just understanding the world. All these books I've been reading. I have a book blog, which I basically write my notes of books I've been reading, and I've been reading like there's a series of books called The Great Works of Western Literature or Western World, and I don't have one in front of me here. No, it's over there. I'm not going to get up. And it's about 50 odd books, 50, volumes. There's several books within them. So like the complete works of William Shakespeare, complete works of Aristotle, complete works of Plato, the whole thing of Montaigne, which I love Montaigne. And it's interesting, like you start thinking like, oh wow, these thoughts I've had. Somebody's been thinking about them long before I have, and it's interesting because then if you read what they read, it causes you to have new thoughts because you think I never really thought about it this way, and that sends you off in a different direction. So it's almost like the creator of the whole series basically called it a great conversation that all of these famous writers had with each other, even though they lived, centuries apart from one another. They're still making reference to the same ideas like happiness and love and what's good government, what's bad government, what is good and evil, and those sorts of things. And they have continual conversations with each other throughout the centuries, and it's fascinating because you can participate in this and you can start looking in the actual tangible world for this. And that to me was more important than like getting the latest movie, or getting the newest, biggest TV. It just didn't really do it for me anymore. Uh, I never really was massively into technology. I've always had some. I mean, I've had a computer since I graduated from high school. I got a computer. Um, it was a Gateway. I don't think they still make those, but they had like little cow designs on them. I think they were made out in like Iowa or something like that. So the I've had a computer of my own for the last 20 years, and but I never really got into the whole like gaming thing. I never really got into having all the latest technological gadgets and things like that. I didn't really care about that. So I started noticing like I cared less and less about material possession, and obviously less and less about fashion. So um, when you rejigger all of your priorities, um, you start to you have to reset your goals. And so that means like, okay, an overarching goal of mine is to get a pretty decent job. That way I can feel comfortable. I don't have to worry about the bills. I just have to do the work. And since I don't spend much money, I can probably save a lot of money and, maybe get a house, the old American dream. But the thing is that my goals are to continue this blog, to continue this. I'm only on the third year of this 10-year reading plan. I'm almost done with it, and I've skipped around, so I've probably done about 4 years worth of this. Although I've been doing it for 7. And you know what? It's all about setting your own goals, and I think a lot of people just sort of slept through the pandemic and they didn't use it as an opportunity to make their lives better or to refocus their attention on things that matter to them. A lot of people, I feel like, don't even know what matters to them. They just kind of go through life as if they're just sleepwalking through life. And it's kind of sad to see. And you hope they wake up one day, but don't want to be the one who shakes them because typically people kind of get pissed off at you if you try to pontificate on to them, saying like, oh, you really ought to read what all these books because it comes off as I'm better than you. I was like, I'm not better than you, but my eyes are being opened, and I just wonder what it's going to be like in 5 years or 10 years. What happens when I reread something like King Lear for the third time? How much more insight? Because some of these books, you need to be at least 30 years old to understand. Shakespeare should not be taught to children. It should not be taught in high school. There's no way you can get it. Maybe Romeo and Juliet, but they don't see the wisdom in how stupid teenagers can be and how passionate they can be. And adults are stupid too because they're the ones who set up the whole the atmosphere of you can't date with anybody with this last name. So and I don't think that Othello or King Lear can be taught to a child. Anybody under the age of even 25, 30, I would say you start to see age in your parents, and you start to understand the nature of what power looks like, um, and your familiar relations, how they change over the course of the years. Uh, that's something that only experience can teach, and that's the real genius behind someone like Shakespeare, or some of these older plays like Aeschylus and Sophocles, is that while they might be a little bit strange to us because they don't have the same values, like, more, at least culturally Christian values, um, they you can see the pain that the death of a parent brings to someone, uh, like, Agamemnon watching uh, Orestes see his father being killed by his mother. Imagine how fucked up that is. You know, that ought to send you crazy. But anyway, like, so these things, these ideas keep coming back, and revisiting them, it kind of reinforces, and then you start adding all these pieces, and they kind of all, mix together, and it's really just it's fun to see where your thoughts are going to go. So anyway, just about out of tea, so I will see you pretty soon.